Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Happy Friday. My name is Katie and I am sharing different thoughts and viewpoints about weight loss and obesity as I'm on my own weight loss journey now with a GLP-1 down 80 pounds as of Sunday. So today's topic that I want to talk about is this concept of a sustainable diet. I feel like it's a really big buzzword out there right now, and it's kind of like the holy grail that people want you to follow: a sustainable diet. Don't do anything extreme, don't do anything restrictive, don't do this, don't do that, everything in moderation. You can't cut out food groups, you can't do this, you can't do that, or else you'll never be able to stick to it, and it's not a sustainable diet. So I have a slightly different feeling about this than most people out there, and I kind of want to share my viewpoint today. So before I dive in, I want to say a few things. Number one, I am not a dietitian. I am not a nutritionist, and I am not a doctor. I don't know you. I don't know your medical conditions. I don't know your weight loss history. I don't know if you have a history of disordered eating. So I cannot make any recommendations for anybody. These are just my thoughts. These are, coming from my own experience with dieting, weight loss, obesity over 25 years. And I'm just sharing my opinion. I'm just sharing my thoughts and my feelings, but this is not medical advice for anyone. If you are triggered in any way by the talk of different types of restrictive diets or things like that, then maybe this video isn't for you. So let's dive in. So in terms of sustainable, I think what that usually means when people are talking about that is like everything in moderation. So again, not cutting out food groups, not doing a restrictive plan, things like that. Or maybe another word for it or expression for it would be if it fits your macros or if it fits your calories. Some other people might call it like an 80-20 rule, where you're eating healthy 80% of the time, and then 20% of the time you can kind of eat whatever you want. So those are sort of, and maybe there are more, but those are the ones that just came to mind. And I want to say that this approach works for some people. This approach probably works for people who are relatively healthy. They have generally good metabolic health, they have good insulin sensitivity, good leptin sensitivity, and they probably don't have that much weight to lose. We're talking about 10 pounds, 15 pounds, maybe 20. Not somebody who has struggled constantly throughout their life with obesity or has had, 50, 80, 100 pounds to lose more than once in their life. So this seems to work really, really well for some people, and it really does work for some people. They can just do this approach and they can eat a little bit healthier, but still give themselves some snacks and treats and things like that, and they can still get to their goals and lose the weight and then kind of keep it off as long as they keep on that track. It's also good. Well, I guess that's it. I mean, those are the people that this is good for. If you don't have a lot of weight to lose and you're really not unhealthy, you haven't been struggling with obesity or overweight for many, many years, this approach will probably work just fine for you. You'll get to your goals and it'll be good. People do swear by this approach, and one reason is because for some people it does work. So obviously if this works for, Jen over here and Larry over there, well, then it must work for everybody. And that's just not the case. It's also now a little bit taboo to talk about being strict or restrictive. It's a bad thing. And there's some good reason for that. I know that for some people, it can lead to unhealthy behaviors if you're trying to eat a strict diet. So for some people, if they're trying to be perfect, if they're trying to eat clean or some kind of idea of a perfect diet, they'll be good all week and then maybe they'll binge on the weekend, and this is like a cycle that they'll get into, and that's obviously an unhealthy cycle to be in. this kind of approach, the sustainable approach, is more flexible for real life. So if you're the kind of person that likes to eat out a lot, or you're constantly traveling, or, if you find yourself in situations where you can't control the menu very often, you're going to dinner parties and stuff like that, obviously it's easier. It's easier to do if you have some flexibility, and allowing yourself to eat some things that are not, according to some specific paradigm or something. And I will say this, if this approach works for you, have at it, stick with it, keep going. Wonderful. I mean, that's amazing for you. You're really lucky. The problem is it doesn't work for everyone. And I am a living example of that. So I've done Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, macros, calories in, calories out, carb cycling. I've done a lot of different things that would be considered more sustainable. So, everything has some wiggle room. Every plan that I've done has, a little bit of everything. It has a little bit of protein and fruits and vegetables, but also some fun foods and, some processed foods and some treats and desserts and snacks and things like that. And it's fine. I lost the weight every single time that I used one of those programs, and they're all designed to be sustainable. And in the end, at the end of the day, I ended up fat again. I ended up obese every single time. So it isn't that it doesn't work for weight loss, but it might just not be the solution that, people are touting it as. So, if you were like me and you have a history of obesity, or you've yo-yo dieted for years, and I'm not even talking about fad diets, like obviously eating nothing but cabbage soup or cabbage or whatever for a period of time is not sustainable, and nobody's going to be able to do that forever. I'm not talking about fad diets. I'm not talking about, I don't even know what the old fad diets have been in the past, but that I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like real diet plans, like real actual plans. If you have obesity, if you yo-yo dieted for years and years, if you have type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, if you've gained weight in perimenopause or menopause, and you can no longer lose the weight just by doing the things that you used to do, if you have PCOS, or if you have any kind of metabolic or chronic disease, I don't think that moderation is your friend. I think, at least for now, okay? I think that there are some conditions that may need a more strict approach, but maybe not forever, okay? So I'm not saying that you have to give up your favorite foods and you never, ever, ever can eat them ever again as long as you live. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that there may be a season in your life that you do need to dial it in, and you need to be strict, and you need to say no, and you need to abstain from certain things long enough to move the needle of your metabolic health. You may need to stop the cycle. You may need to stop doing the things that are promoting this problem for you in the first place. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it seems like chronically elevated insulin is part of the problem behind a lot of these metabolic diseases and obesity and all of this stuff. And if you have chronically elevated insulin and you're eating 3 to 5 meals a day, there's carbs at every meal, processed foods here and there every day, you are just perpetuating this hamster wheel that you're stuck on. You aren't getting off. You are going to keep going on this thing forever and ever and ever and ever. And it doesn't matter how little you eat. It doesn't matter how you restrict your calories. It doesn't matter how much you exercise. If you're not addressing the elevated insulin and some other things that I'm going to talk about in a minute, you're not going to get anywhere. You may lose the weight for a while, and then even the sustainable plans become unsustainable at a certain point in time, because the things going on inside of you are going to drive you to go back to start having worse and worse and worse habits again, eating more and more, dealing with hunger. And honestly, the same thing can happen even on a GLP-1. You know, I've kind of seen it. I've been around in this space, not really that long. You know, I've been here since the beginning of the year, observing. I'm following every account that I can find, you know, and I've seen a lot of things where people, you know, they even get stuck on their GLP-1. They either can't get to their goal, even though they're doing all the right things that dietitians will say, and all the advice that I've seen online from nutritionists. And it just, you know, it causes me some concerns. I will say this, there's nothing wrong if you do need a GLP-1 forever. There is no shame in that. I don't judge that. I may need to be on them forever as well. I'm still on this journey right now, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with relying on it. If that's what we need to do, then that's what we need to do. But I'm starting to believe now that there may be another option. One of my biggest fears with the GLP-1 journey that I'm on is that someday it might actually stop working for me. I have seen it in accounts that I follow online and in groups that I've been involved in, that sometimes people get to the highest dose of a GLP-1 and they stop losing weight, and their hunger comes back, their appetite comes back, the medication stops working as well anymore, the food noise comes back, and I don't know, I haven't seen it yet, whether they're going to gain their weight back in the long run or not. But I know for me, you know, food noise and hunger, those were the main drivers for me of what caused me to gain all this weight this time, and in the past as well. I just cannot be hungry all the time and not cave in. I mean, I cannot, you know, eat on a calorie deficit forever. I cannot be hungry forever and not eventually, you know, go down that spiral, you know, where I can't stop myself anymore. So if that were to happen to me, if I were to get to the point where my hunger returned and my food noise returned, I think it would only be a matter of time before I would start gaining weight back. That's my biggest fear. You know, this medication has been an absolute astounding miracle for me in my life, and I want to utilize it to the best of my ability. And again, I'm terrified, really, of what could happen if this medication ever stopped working for me. So that's why I'm so interested in this topic. So again, what if, hear me out, what if being strict, or even what they would call maybe extreme, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. What if doing that for a period of time, a finite period of time, we're not talking about forever. I'm not talking about getting into some kind of like dogmatic religious, you know, staunch, you know, you must eat this way, this is the only way to eat. You know, I'm not talking about that. But what if you did a more strict, strategic approach for a period of time, so that you could reverse the metabolic disease, the epigenetic factors that are driving this obesity and this overweight and this problem that you're having, so that someday you might actually have the metabolic resilience to really be able to do a moderation approach without being stuck on this hamster wheel forever, without gaining the weight back. I think there's hope that that is a possibility. But you have to be willing to dive in. You have to be willing to say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be strict. I'm going to follow this game plan with an end goal in mind and an end point in mind. You know, again, it's not about forever. It's about doing it long enough. So I've been following, you know, the fear that I had talked about a minute ago is what prompted me to kind of be looking for more answers. And I've gone down all these different accounts on YouTube and Instagram and all over the place. And I have a few platforms that I really, really strongly recommend that you maybe check out. One is Dr. Boz. She's Annette Bosworth, and she's a doctor, a physician in Florida. But she has online courses on YouTube for free. She does lots of lessons about metabolism and insulin and how your body works and how weight loss works and fat loss works. And she really has tons and tons of free resources, tons and tons of information, all science-backed, all well thought out, and it really shows you how to start thinking about reversing insulin resistance, which is one of the factors that is involved here. Another person that I have watched a bunch of his videos is Ben Bikman. He's a scientist and he studies lipids, I guess, so fats and lipids and all the kind of things that are related to weight loss and health. And again, he's got a lot of research that goes into detail about what's going on in your body when you eat this, what goes on in your body when you eat that, why can somebody lose weight like this and somebody else can't. It's really lots of good information, and again, science and research and fact-based. I also follow a woman named Sarah Kleiner, and she has some information that I had never even considered before in my life, and it was the profound effect that circadian rhythm has on our body and our metabolism, in particular when it comes to leptin and how leptin interacts with insulin and how it's all involved, in all of these processes in metabolic health. So those three accounts, have really sort of set the foundation for my hope that this is something that, with a strategic approach for a long enough period of time, we could actually reverse some of these metabolic conditions and maybe kind of revert back to a state where our body actually could be resilient. We actually could be metabolically healthy to the point where now we can actually live that sustainable diet that we all want, that sustainable, everything in moderation and eating clean some of the time, but then also eating treats and having more flexibility there. That's the holy grail. That's what I'm here. That's what I'm after. And that's my quest right now. So I believe that you can leverage things like an intentional ketogenic approach or a carnivore diet, in addition to some intentional, specific, strategic fasting, and getting realigned with the correct circadian rhythm, that I will be able to reverse insulin resistance and leptin resistance, and maybe even the epigenetic trigger that set off my obesity in the first place. I know that a lot of people get triggered by ketogenic diet, carnivore diet. Oh my God, no. Why would I ever do that? That sounds horrible. I never wanted to do it again. I did it many, many years ago, and I lost weight, of course, gained it all back again, of course, because I didn't really do it very strategically. I didn't really understand a lot of the nuances with it, and I didn't really understand my body, and I wasn't really tracking the right metrics with it. So, just a ketogenic approach isn't going to solve this problem. Just eating a carnivore diet isn't going to solve the problem. Those things just in and of themselves are not enough, but they are possibly a part of the solution. And I understand it if it triggers you. I understand it if you don't want to hear that word, if you don't want to consider something so restrictive and so strict. But the more I learn about it, the more I think that this is it. Like, this is the pathway. This is the holy grail. This is the way that I'm going to restore my health at the core. And I encourage you to maybe consider following some of those platforms, checking out what they have to say, see what you think about that, see if you think that, that's something that Would you like that? I mean, I want to know from you, would you consider temporarily following a more strict approach if it meant the end of your obesity struggle for good? Would you? Let me know. Let me know in the comments if you would consider doing something strict for a finite period of time if it meant that you could finally, truly end your struggle with obesity. Let me know.